The NBA has a problem, a big problem. The method of which teams acquire new young talent, the NBA draft, is broken. It incentivizes losing by rewarding inept organizations and punishing teams that are just trying to field the best players possible to win and maybe only getting the 80th seed in the playoffs or something similar to that. In the NBA, teams are rewarded for either being a contender or for rebuilding, while the middle ground is left getting the worst of both worlds. But what if there was a different way? What if there was a way to abolish the NBA draft entirely and replace it with a new system? A system that, while disincentivizing losing, still gives those bad teams a chance at the top young talent, and therefore still maintains the parity that the NBA draft brings. This is my bold idea to abolish and replace the NBA draft, and you're watching Bold Ideas. In 2018, Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, was fined $600,000 for telling his team to tank. And just in case you're unfamiliar with that term, tanking is when a team will lose intentionally with the hopes of securing a high draft pick that will allow them to bring in a top college prospect. And that's what happened with the 2018 Mavericks. Losing is obviously a bad thing. When you say losing intentionally, that sounds bad on paper, it sounds bad in your head, and it sounds bad when you say it. Nobody wants to see losing. The problem is that it worked. That losing season allowed them to trade from 5 to 3 and bring in Luka Doncic, already one of the best players in the league despite only being around for just a few years. And Mark Cuban isn't the first to do something like this either. The 2013 Sixers infamously disassembled their playoff team in hopes of acquiring new young talent that would allow them to contend in the future. And that worked too, bringing them all-stars like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And the reason why all this shenanigans happens pretty much boils down to one thing. The NBA draft incentivizes losing. But the NBA draft does serve a necessary utility. The NBA draft was created to maintain parity among the teams. It allows small market teams to compete for young talent just as much as big market teams with lots of money. But the issues with the draft are hard to overlook, and the NBA knows this, which is why they actually changed the draft odds in 2019. So the chances at getting the number 1 pick was less weighted towards the top, and the odds were a bit more evenly distributed, as you can see here. The worst team's odds go from about 25% before the change to about 14%, which is a change of 15%, which is quite a lot. And the NBA did this because they know tanking is a real problem that needs to be addressed. And there's a little bit more to this on top of the losing. There is something that probably a lot of you have thought of in the back of your head, but you don't really mention it, but you kind of know that it's a bit of a problem, that the NBA draft is really, really unfair to the players. I mean, in what other profession do we force the best of the best to go to the worst of the worst organizations? Being the best and working as hard as those people do is supposed to afford you more opportunities, not less. It's supposed to allow you to go to the best places, not the worst places. I mean, this is like, imagine if we went to a Harvard law graduate and we told them, oh yeah, you gotta be a prosecutor in North Dakota. No shame to North Dakota, of course, but it's not exactly where top lawyers want to be. So there is that aspect, but I know most of you are really worried about the fact that it incentivizes losing, which is understandably a big problem. Luckily, my system though will solve both, so you can ease your conscience and have a more practical system. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that the Lakers, obviously prior to getting LeBron recently, went years and years just striking out on top free agents? Why is it that the Knicks did the same thing? Why is it that the Rockets with James Harden and Russell Westbrook can't just go out and bring in a third star that they kind of clearly seem to need? Well, all those things hindering those teams are from the same issue. The salary cap. The salary cap hinders teams like the Lakers, who are worth, $4 billion, because it only allows them to spend as much as the cap allows. And because everyone has the same cap, they can't offer actually more money than anyone else can. And as we've seen from history, with, like I said, the Lakers and the Knicks striking out year after year, being the Lakers isn't enough. There's so much money in the league, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. It's more about your organization. The Knicks haven't brought in an all-star free agent since Amari Stoudemire. So what history has told us is the salary cap is indeed capable of maintaining parity in the league and preventing those big market teams from imposing their financial might on the smaller market teams. So if we know the cap works, why not use it for the rookies? Let's have a rookie cap. This rookie cap will operate independently of the regular salary cap. Let's set this rookie cap at about $20 million. The number is, of course, a little arbitrary. Perhaps it would be better at $23 million or maybe even $19 million. But for the sake of this discussion, we're going to go with $20 million. I believe that's probably going to be about the right number, give or take about $5 million. But again, for the sake of the discussion, we're going to roll with that 20 flat number. It makes things easier when we're going through the math. Now, a free agent system makes a lot of sense because, as I've said before, we already know a salary cap is capable of maintaining parity through the salary cap, max contracts, minimum contracts. And not only that, but everyone is familiar with the process, everyone knows how it works. So let's just have a rookie cap, and it will operate independently of the regular cap. So that's the basic idea, and now we're going to get into a lot of the details. Implementation is obviously going to be really important. No plan is so perfect that if it's not implemented right, it won't fail miserably, and this plan is no different. There's going to be a lot of details that we're going to get into that will allow this to work and really help maintain the parity, because just having a free agency rookie system is not going to get the job done. As you'll see later on, I'm going to explain some points and then explain how we're going to solve those problems. There's a lot of thought that went into this and a lot of details coming up, so bear with me, and I'm going to try to lay this out for you as best I can. Let's get into it. Right now, rookie contracts are extremely mandated. As you can see here, depending on your pick, pretty much every detail has been predetermined. Wherever you're selected, the length and salary is pretty much set. And again, as you can see here, the current rookie pay scale will pay the number one pick $8.1 million, and that will progressively drop until $1.6 million for the last pick in the first round of the NBA draft. But of course, the NBA is 2 rounds, so let's set the max rookie contract at $8.1 million, and let's make the league minimum of $893,000, which is really what a second round pick would be getting anyways, so I think that's pretty fair. And of course, teams can sign as many rookies for the league minimum as they want, just as they would with normal post-draft rookie free agency. So all this means in my rookie system, rookies at the top and the rookies at the bottom will pretty much be earning the exact same money as in my system or as they were previously with the NBA draft. But the players will now be free to sign with whichever team they wish for whatever amount of money is negotiated, as long as it falls within those max minimum contract salaries, which we're going to get into a little bit more. There's going to be some regulation on that. The only thing predetermined will be the length of the deals, which are going to be 3 or 4 years for the max, near max contracts and 3 years for the minimum contracts and those small money deals. The reason for this predetermined length, I'm going to get to in about 10 seconds. So I just want to recap really quickly. Essentially, this rookie cap system will be the same as NBA free agency. There's going to be a set amount of money you can spend. There's going to be max contracts and minimum contracts, and all of that will be negotiated, and you can sign whoever you want, provided that you have this cap space. The teams have to have the space to sign you. And that's the key leveler in all of this, because the length locks teams into the rookie recruits, tying them to the rookie cap for at least 3 or 4 years. We've all seen teams rushing into free agency with tons of cap space, throwing out max contracts like it's Christmas. Need to remind you about 2016 when players like Timofey Mozgov were getting $17 million a year, and the next thing you know, they're trying to deal that player because their team is crippled by a huge contract they gave to an unproven player. The length of the contract determines how long that bad contract will haunt your team and hinder you from making further free agency decisions and bringing in new players. So applying this to our rookie cap, which remember we set at $20 million, means if, let's say, a team like the Knicks uses their big city, big money powers to bring in a top young college player, that's great, that's fine. We don't want to prevent horrible organizations like the Knicks from bringing in top players just because they have a lot of money. What's going to hold them back is that if they sign that top young player, they have to sign them to the max of $8.1 million, which is going to leave them with only about $12 million annually left to spend for the remainder of that contract. And remember, we said those max deals are going to be 4 years, which means they're only going to be left with $12 million annually for 4 years. And that's for all of their rookie crop. And of course, they will still have room to sign another top young player. So if they want, they can come in the next year and sign another max contract rookie, and that's fine. But then the next year, they'll only have about $4 million left, and they'll probably be looking at those third tier, what would normally be mid-second round type players. And that's good. We don't want teams to be able to just stockpile a bunch of young players. The salary cap would force them to only bring in 1 or 2 top players and 1 or 2 decent players, and the teams can scramble that around depending on how they want to build their team and how good their scouting department is, to be honest. I know you're probably thinking, well, there's kind of a big flaw here. I don't want to see the top team go out and bring in 2 top young players every 5th year. That's a terrible idea. And you're right, I will get into that. I promise later in this video, I will address that because that is indeed a big problem. What I'm really trying to get at here is that teams like New York with their big money, it's not going to be enough. They're not going to be able to use that big money power to just bring in whoever they want, because just like with regular free agency, where they have the same cap, they have the same money to offer as everyone else for the most part, they can't just reel people in by just being the Knicks. That's not enough. Being a good organization matters. Having good coaching matters. The makeup of your team matters. All that stuff that contributes to winning matters. Being a big city and just having money isn't enough. Because if all of that were true, the Knicks wouldn't be the laughingstock of the league right now. And all of the structural changes are going to completely change the mindsets of NBA teams. There will be no more tanking in hopes of getting a higher draft pick. No more stripping solid borderline playoff teams and hoping of losing a few more games so you're not going to be getting the 10th pick so you can get the 4th pick because you scouting isn't good enough to land you a good player at 9. There'll be no more teams trying out a bunch of inexperienced players calling a youth movement when we all know they're just trying to lose a bunch of games so they can get the top 3 pick. Under this system, none of that will happen because a guy like Zion Williamson, he ain't gonna sign with you if you got 17 wins and if you fired 3 coaches in the last 3 years. But he might sign with the 28-win team that just signed a decent free agent and just hired a respectable head coach. And that's a good thing. That's exactly what we want to reward. We want organization to matter. We want coaching to matter. And we want good scouting to matter. We want all these things to matter. Nobody wants to see losing. Under this system, we can finally reward those really good organizations who are just falling on some hard times with a chance of getting a top young talent instead of just hoping they're going to get lucky in the draft. Now, as I said before, that we're going to be with some more details to discuss. Well, the rookie salary cap system isn't perfect. There's going to need to be some restrictions, some rules in order to help keep that parity and just not allow the top teams to just do whatever they want. Because really, no one, and I mean no one, except Lakers fans, wants to see the number 1 team just go out and sign whoever they want. I mean, imagine the Lakers, who just won the NBA championship, were able to go out and sign James Wiseman or Anthony Edwards, whoever it is you think is the top player. That would be awful. Literally nobody wants to see that. That would be terrible. So we really can't just have a complete free-for-all free agency. There's going to have to be some restrictions, and I'm going to explain more of that right now. So the way that we're going to prevent this is with max salaries. Remember, before the regular free agency, we got max and minimum salaries. Well, now we're going to get into those max and minimum salaries a little bit in more detail. In the rookie cap, all non-playoff teams and the 7th and the 8th seed team are all going to be allowed to sign a max rookie free agent. So that means all non-playoff teams and the 7th and 8th seed will be able to sign a rookie for the max $8.1 million. And the reason why I'm including those 7th and 8th seed teams is because, again, the whole point of this is so we can incentivize winning. And what happens a lot is you see sometimes those 8th, 7th seed teams, sometimes they're only a couple games out from being 10th or even 11th in some years. And the next year they might finish 10th or 11th, and that motivates those teams to maybe get rid of a couple players, lose more games, and then try to get a number 1 pick and try to take another crack at it later in developing that championship contender team. We don't want to disincentivize those 8th, 7th seed teams by being like, oh, you just made the playoffs, congratulations, now you can't get a top player. But from 6 on up, it will progressively drop $1.1 million for each seed. So let me illustrate right here. So as you can see, this means that if you're the 6th seed, you're only going to be able to sign someone for $7 million. And if you're the 5th seed, you're only going to be able to sign someone for $5.9 million. And if you're the 4th seed, it's going to be $4.8 million. And that goes on, leaving the number 1 pick with just $1.5 million max salary to try and sign a rookie free agent, which sounds like a small amount of money, but really it's pretty fair considering that championship team in a draft would be picking somewhere between 25 and 30, and the rookie mandates are about $1.5 million for those slots, so that really doesn't change anything. So the money the rookies will be earning under the draft or under the rookie salary cap are really going to be basically exactly the same. And the seed will still determine how sought after of a young player you can acquire. But it does still give players that chance to choose. And most importantly, for those competing lower teams that are going to be working with a max salary, their culture, commitment to winning, makeup of the team, and ownership will matter instead of how many games you lost. Under this system, those borderline playoff teams like the Magic wouldn't have to make a decision between aggressive mediocrity for the next 5 years or a painful losing-filled rebuild attempt in hopes of getting a top young player. No, instead, they're going to be rewarded for making that 8th seed because they're going to be actually one of the better positioned teams, being one of the few playoff teams that are going to have a max salary to work with. And instead of being punished for just squeaking into the playoffs and then losing out on the potential of being a lottery team, they're actually going to be rewarded for squeaking into the playoffs. They'll have the capacity to go out and bring in a potentially future all-star from the college ranks. And once they do, yes, half their salary cap will be filled, but they'll still have room to go out and sign another top one if they really wanted, or just another 2nd-tier guy or 3rd-tier guy. But truthfully, as an 8th seed team, adding a potential future all-star and another decent mid-tier rookie, that really should be all they need to get into those higher seeds and start being a really relevant competing team. So parity is maintained. The best teams are still barred from getting the top young players while still allowing the poor teams to go out and bring in top young players without having to just lose games. The players get some choices, and tanking becomes a thing of the past. I think it's a pretty great idea, but there are still a couple more things to consider. Again, just a couple more tweaks and modifications to really make this work perfectly. Kind of the big problem that's going to be missing is NBA draft picks, which are one of the most traded parts of the game. I mean, basically every single NBA trade involves a draft pick. It's what allows teams to rebuild the rosters, to retool the rosters. They need those picks because teams would rather have that prospect and that hope of bringing in whoever they want to get instead of just having to pick whatever the other team has, and which is obviously a much more limited pool. Teams also often pair that draft pick with a bad free agency move, package it with a bad contract and ship it out and free up their salary and allow them to go bring in somebody else. It's a huge bargaining tool, and it's pretty much what gets most deals done. So to remedy this issue of being in this new system where there is nothing to trade, I am going to make some further modifications, which is going to make tangible. We're going to make those rookie free agency signings something tangible and then therefore tradable. Let me explain. So in a normal draft, there are 2 rounds. So we're going to give each team 2 rookie free agency slots. And the seed placement that team finished in that year will lock in the max salary for that particular slot. This makes that free agent rookie signing something tangible and therefore tradable. A team could potentially trade their rookie free agent slot, and then the receiving team will now have the ability to sign a third player for the max salary of whatever seed that other team finished in. I know that might be a little confusing, so I'm going to illustrate this a little bit further. As you can see over here, under this rookie trading system, if the Heat were a 5th seed, which would provide them with the $5.9 million max contract, and then they traded that slot, let's say to Milwaukee, that receiving team will now be able to sign a third player for $5.9 million. So again, that max salary value is tied to that slot and stays with that slot. Doesn't matter if it's traded or if it's swapped or whatever you do with that slot. Wherever the team finishes that season, the value is locked into that slot, and whatever you do with it, the value stays. This is really good and really important because it means that the position of the team sending the pick still impacts the trade value of the slot, which is, again, really good. If we wouldn't want the Lakers to be able to just trade a rookie slot to a team and then they could just sign him for however much money, because that would massively overinflate the Lakers rookie slots. We don't want to do that. They're a top team. They don't deserve that much. They deserve something smaller. Like we were saying, we were giving them a $1.5 million max. So yes, it is possible for a team like the Lakers to trade with the Magic and acquire the Magic's rookie max free agent slot. But putting the fact that this is technically possible in a current system anyways, to do that, the Lakers would have to give up something big. And in that case, fair's fair. If you gave up something big, you deserve something big back. There's nothing wrong with that. Free market. It's all good. So that's that handled. The rookie slots are now something tangible, therefore something tradable, and the teams maintain that value and that trade bait, essentially. Now, the second question is a bit more nitty gritty. How will it work if a team has, let's say, a fully maxed out rookie salary cap, but then trades and acquires, say, a $4.9 million rookie slot? To solve this, we're going to do something not unlike what the NBA does right now with their trading system. So currently, right now in the NBA regular system, if a team acquires a player when they're at the max, they'll have to send back a matching max contract. So if, let's say, a team is at the max contract and they receive a $15 million player, they have to send back a $15 million player. They have to match that deal if they're at the cap. Now, if they have the cap space and they can absorb that and still remain under the cap, then they can just take them and send back whatever they want. So for example, if let's say the cap was $100 million, payroll was $70 million, we could acquire a player up to $30 million, still remain under that cap and not be forced to match that contract. So we're going to do something similar, but with our rookie slots, you're still going to have to match the salary of the slot acquired, but you only have to match it with any contract you want. You don't have to match it with another rookie slot because they're just too rare. There's not enough of them to really do that. So there'll just be some accountability. You have to match it with some contract. You can't just take them and send back whatever you want. And just another detail here that does have a pretty simple solution. If a team is a maxed out rookie cap because, let's say, maybe they blew it all on 2 top prospects the last 2 years, they will be allowed to continue to sign as many rookie free agents as they want as long as it's at the league minimum, which is basically what teams are allowed to do now. If a team's at the cap, they can continue to sign as many players as they want. They're not actually hindered by number, but once they hit that max cap, they can only sign players at the minimum value. And so if a team is at the cap and they have that minimum value, and then let's say if they wanted to trade that slot, they would be trading a minimum value slot, which is essentially valueless basically. So it really has no trade value. And that's pretty much it. That's my plan. I hope you can see how much I've thought about this. I spent a lot of time pondering and trying to work out some details and really maintain that parity. And again, we want to incentivize winning. It incentivizes good ownership, good management, good coaching, good team makeup, culture, all those things that we want to reward. It rewards everything that should be rewarded in sports, and it de-incentivizes all those things that should be disincentivized in sports and all those things that we want to see disincentivized in sports. And on top of all that, we can stop forcing our top young talent to go to horrible organizations, which probably ruins a lot of their careers. They'll now be able to sign with whichever team they want. And we can finally have a system where you stop rooting for your team to lose games for what you hope is a not too distant, though statistically unlikely chance of your team competing for championships. If you've made it this far, thank you. You guys are amazing. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed. Also, let me know down in the comments what you think my next video should be about. I'm considering some different ideas. I'm considering doing a video about terraforming Mars, which is really interesting. Just Google it or put a comment down and I'll tell you about it. Or possibly implementing promotion relegation, which is a system that would bring teams like the NBA and force the worst teams to compete in the G League. I know that sounds a little bit weird. Again, I will explain if you want to see that. Let me know down in the comments. I'll see you in my next video, and thank you. Have a great day.